Okay, all right. So yes, peer review, how it's working. Hopefully you all have your drafts in a presentable state. Um, if you don't have a draft at all, or like anything to share for peer review, go ahead and send me a private message so that I know, like, I'm not really able to participate in peer review because I don't actually have anything. Let me know that privately, if that's you. But hopefully all of you at least have something that you can hand over to a peer. So what we're going to do in just a minute is I'm going to divide you up, or well, the system will divide you up. We're going to put you into breakout rooms, and you'll meet with your partners and or small groups if we have an odd number. So we'll see how many we can get here. And in your breakout rooms with your partners, you're going to go ahead and either exchange email addresses, or I recommend going through Teams. I just think Teams, I don't know, is easy. You can set up a chat with your partner in Teams. You can upload your paper directly to Teams. They can comment on your paper directly in Teams. You can see it all through Teams. I don't know. So I just like Teams, but you can do email if you want. Old-fashioned email works too. Just sort of exchange information with your partner, okay, in your breakout rooms, and say hi and get to know each other for a second. And then you're not actually going to spend time doing the peer review right now, okay? We'll come back to the large group after you've met with your partners and exchanged information. We'll come back to the large group. We'll talk about Hamlet as normal. And then you'll need to spend some time either this afternoon or tomorrow actually going through their paper and reading it and commenting on it and get it back to them by tomorrow night. Okay. So actually, let me share my screen really quick and I'll walk you through Blackboard. Except of course, here I am on email. Okay, no, not you. Oh goodness. There we go. Okay, so this is this week's stuff. You read Hamlet, you posted a discussion board, draft. Here it is. Okay, so peer review participation. This is how you get points for participating in peer review. You don't actually need to submit your draft to me. Just tomorrow or even Saturday or whatever point you're you have time. Once your partner gets back to you with your comments, come over here and answer these 5 questions really quick. Okay, it's like, who's your partner's name? Did they have a draft for you? Did you have a draft for them? And then just briefly, what sort of feedback did you give your partner? And what feedback did they give you? What changes do you plan to make? So that's just like, prove to me that you participated and that you gave a good effort, and you'll get points for participating, okay? On the note of giving comments, I decided just before class to throw these 2 things up here. These are called modules, and I actually designed these for my 101 students, my freshman students, but I thought, you know, why not throw them up here just in case. So if you're interested, and I do recommend it, there's some good information in here about how to do, why we do peer review. If you're like, I hate peer review, I hate it, it's pointless. I've been there where I've been like, peer review is a waste of time. Why are we doing this? Especially at this level, of course. So anyway, here's this module sort of gives you my rationale for why I do peer review. And there's a short little 10-minute lecture video about how to give good comments. So anyway, if you feel like that would be useful, I threw it up here. Like I said, it's designed for my freshmen, but it still has good information in it. And then, so you can go through this, go through your partner's papers, leave thoughtful, good comments that are helpful. And then you'll send your comments back to your partner. And then you guys have until Sunday to revise, polish up, you know, remove all of your peer reviews comments. Don't submit your final paper with all of those comments still attached. Polish it up, make it look perfect and good. And on that note, I have here, this is another module that I make for my 101 students, but thought I'd throw it up here too. Just some revision and editing strategy basics if you want to look over that. My suggestions for how to do, for some good strategies for revising and editing. Okay, here it is though. this will become available tomorrow in the morning. This is the link where you will submit your final paper, okay? So I didn't make it available earlier than today because I wanted you guys to do peer review first, but by tomorrow morning, this will be available. So as soon as you have your paper, or as soon as you have comments back from your partner, as soon as you've revised everything and gotten it all polished up, you can submit at any point between tomorrow and Sunday night when it's due. Any questions about that? Questions about how peer review is working or submitting anything? Okay, so the other reminder is that means Sunday night is it for all work for the unit. That's gonna, like, after Sunday, things will be too late to hand in anymore. So any discussion board comments or anything needs to be in by Sunday. I recommend checking your grades, seeing if you have any missing work at all, and get it in by Sunday, okay? Also, while we're over here on Blackboard, just to note, Unit 2 is visible now. You should be able to click on Unit 2. And right now, once again, all you can really see is the reading assignments. We're doing Romeo and Juliet and Othello next unit. And tomorrow, like usual, all the week 5 stuff will populate. So anyway, just so you know, Unit 2 is there so you can see it. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing now.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I know I already emailed you about me needing to get off early. After we discuss with our partner and exchange the links or do whatever we need to do, is it okay if I leave for my appointment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Rebecca has to duck out early, which is why we're doing this first. So I'm going to go ahead and divide you up into your breakout rooms right now, where you'll meet with your partners and or groups. We'll see how that shakes out and exchange information. And then once you have sort of exchanged your information and you're good, come back here to the main group, and then we'll talk about Hamlet, finish Hamlet. So, okay, give me a second to set this up. I'm not very good with breakout rooms yet. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let me see if this. Okay, I think this might work. Here we go. Okay, so a little box is going to pop up and it's going to say join. So you just go ahead and hit join as soon as this pops up. Okay. Hey guys. Guess you guys were quick. It's taken everyone else a little bit longer.
Yeah, we used to host through Teams, so it was already sort of set up for us.
Uh-huh, yeah. Okay, so we're still waiting on 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're still waiting on 10. Oh, wait. I have. No. Broadcasting. Save. Okay, so give everyone one more minute. I think if I close all the rooms, it automatically, yep, okay. So I've given people 60 seconds. Hopefully that's enough time for everyone. All right, hey guys, how we doing? We doing good? We're all okay? Shared our information? Okay. And we're still waiting on 2 rooms to get back. Okay. Great, we're all back now. Okay, did you guys all have enough time? We're all good? So, right, after this meeting, whatever, anytime between now and tomorrow, just read through, give comments, and get those comments back to your partner, okay? All right. So let's talk about Hamlet. Let's finish Hamlet up. Are we excited for this? Good, bloody, violent end. Everybody's dead. So good times. What do we want to talk about? Where do we want to start? Anybody want to start us off with a topic? Something you're dying to talk about? Andrew, you want to start us off?
I forgot who mentioned this, but someone wanted to talk about Hamlet doing the thing.
Yeah. Doing the thing. Well, he did it at the end,
Well,
kind of.
what scene were they talking about though? I forgot.
Okay. So, Alyssa, was that you or was? So last week, what were you talking about as far as like when he could have
said
done
like
it?
Hamlet was gonna do the thing.
Yes.
Oh, you kill everybody.
Right, that was the thing. But so last week you were sort of hinting that he had an opportunity to do it earlier, right? Like he kills the uncle at the end, but he has opportunities throughout the play to do it. How many opportunities does he have to do it?
Like 18.
Like,
Well, I'm saying like he made it seem like it was such a, like it had to be so ceremonial, and I'm just like, okay, you know where he sleeps, you're not being watched, you are the prince, you live there, you can already kind of tell that he wants to murder you too, because your little crazy plan didn't work out because now everyone thinks you're too crazy.
So, right. And I think, okay, I don't know about 18, but there's definitely, he quote unquote confirms his uncle's guilt right there in the play, right? Like in that it's called the mousetrap scene. So he confirms that his uncle's guilty there. And that's maybe his first chance. Hey, uncle's right there. We've confirmed he's guilty. Let's do this. Let's finish this off, right? Doesn't do it right then. So the next scene probably that we could count as his opportunity to do it is when the uncle's praying. That was a scene that got mentioned a few times, so we can talk about the prayer scene. It's pretty interesting. Chooses not to do it then. You're right, like probably has multiple other opportunities, but gets sent off to England and sort of like apparently willingly go. I mean, like he leaves the castle. Why would he do that? Why would he leave the castle when his revenge mission is unfinished? When like he didn't really, I mean, like he was being sent, but why would he go willingly without finishing his uncle off? And then obviously he like aborts that mission, comes back with Horatio on his own. But right, doesn't actually kill his uncle until a lot of other things have happened and a lot of other people have been killed. Why? Why does it take him so long to get around to it?
Well, sort of going back to the like the prayer scene, which is what I'm writing my essay about, what I mentioned last class. The reason he doesn't do it then is because he thinks that his uncle is in confession. And so if his uncle is in confession, if he kills him right now, that soul going to heaven, gonna be perfectly fine, gonna chill out for all eternity, drinking a martini. If he waits until he is drinking, he curses one time, he does anything that could be considered a sin.
What's the actual plan? Like, doesn't he tell his mother, hey, get him in bed with you, and that's when I'm gonna kill him?
I believe he does mention that in like in the thing, like in the incestuous, like in his bed or whatever. If he can get him to do anything considered a sin, he is immediately marked for death.
I will say this, even sex with your wife was considered a sin on most days of the year. This is a super interesting Catholic tradition. I'm not sure how much the Protestants were into it, and there were plenty of Protestants, but even Catholics weren't supposed to have marital sex pretty much ever. There were like 2 days when it was allowable a year. Anyway, beside the point.
Yeah. Hang on. So basically, if he could do anything considered a sin, he was gonna be like immediately gonna be killed because that soul going to hell. And he's like, okay, I will wait so that he does not go to heaven. And then he leaves, and the king says, those were just words. My thoughts are still here. I didn't mean any of that. And so he could have killed him right then and there, and his soul would have still gone to hell. The play would have ended 2 acts earlier.
That is a classic instance of situational irony, right? You guys heard the term irony before, and you're like, that Alanis Morissette song is not, and none of those situations are actually ironic, but this is an ironic situation where Hamlet's not killing him because his soul would go to heaven when he's not actually praying, when he like admits later to not actually praying. sorry, I was just going to address really, it's a tangent, Alyssa, your comment, couldn't they do it for the purpose of having kids? Yes, that was the only allowable time to have kids, but there were also lots of other rules back in the day. And I've seen the list of rules, and they weren't supposed to do it on feast days or holy days, or they weren't supposed to do it during the menstrual cycle, and they weren't supposed to do it. I mean, like, there were so many other times when they weren't supposed to do it. And some, like, basically, it was basically you're supposed to be a monk or a nun, pretty much, even if you were married. Times have evolved since then, though. Okay. What I just want to going back to that prayer scene. So Hamlet doesn't do it then. I feel like one of you brought up this point, that like the fact that he refuses to get his revenge when his uncle's soul might go to heaven is kind of vindictive of Hamlet, right? Like, it's kind of mean, or not mean, but just like yeah, Hamlet's not going to kill him if it's going to work out for him better in the end, right? Even if it is Hamlet's perfect opportunity to avenge his father. There's like a circular moral question there, right? Which is interesting to think about. The other thing that's interesting about the prayer scene, or at least that I find interesting about it, because we were talking about the problem of epistemology, the question of how do we know what we know in this play, and how does Hamlet know that his uncle is guilty? That prayer scene, or at least right before it, is where we actually get the uncle's confession from his lips, right? So we as an audience actually do, this is like one of the few times in the play when we as an audience get verbal confirmation from the uncle that he did murder his brother. Hamlet doesn't hear that part, though. So Hamlet doesn't actually get that confirmation. Hamlet is still working off the information from the ghost and his guesses from his uncle's reaction to the play. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay. While we're talking about Hamlet's wishy-washiness on killing his uncle, who does he kill without a second thought?
Polonius.
Polonius, right. Do we want to talk about that moment? Because, like, no qualms whatsoever about killing him. Okay, so he does think it's the king, right? Go ahead, Owen.
I think in general, it kind of makes me feel, it's one of the one of a number of things that makes me feel like Hamlet's like insanity is not all feigned, where like he has these really in-depth sort of philosophical questions that he's asking of himself and debating, and that, like, you know, that make him second guess whether he's going to, you know, kill the king. But then at the same time, he's doing all of these terrible things to essentially everyone around him and not really paying it any mind internally. And I don't know, it's one of those stories where it's like he's the main character, but he's not by any means like the good guy.
Okay, we definitely need to come back to that idea of goodness, of morality. We'll come back to the idea of morality in this play, because, well, staying focused on this moment of him killing Polonius. What was I going to say about it? Like, I think one of the, I don't know if any of you felt this, but like some of his waffling of not killing the king, or not doing it when he has a chance, is because of that uncertainty of his uncle's guilt, or just this like this moral ambiguity about his right to kill his uncle, about does he have the right to kill his uncle? Is it okay for him? Like, is revenge okay? That seems to be, I mean, at least we can make the argument that that might be a reason why Hamlet is waffling on killing his uncle. The counter argument to that would be how he feels about killing Polonius. Like, true, he thought it was his uncle, but after he finds out it's someone else, what's Hamlet's response when he finds out that it's Polonius he's killed? Yeah, Andrew, you want to jump in?
I don't know. I really love this moment. One, because I don't like Polonius, but um, I like it because it's neither good or bad news.
Okay.
Just very like, well, like what are the consequences that he kills Polonius? Like he hides him. Is he gonna go to jail? Not necessarily. He's gonna go to England and sort of. I mean, the king does send him to England to like, but like since he's the prince, like there's no real consequences to that, and Hamlet treats it as such.
Okay, yeah, Alyssa, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I agree with all of that except for there's not really consequences. I think the biggest consequence of killing Polonius and not really seeming to care was he basically brought Laertes over to Claudius's side. Because I don't think there would have been necessarily like, I don't think Laertes would have been, yeah, let's kill Hamlet. I have no qualms about that, unless it was the fact that he killed his dad and was basically indirectly and directly responsible for his sister's insanity and following death / suicide. So I think the main thing that happened from that, the consequence of that was, the whole massacre at the end and Laertes being a part of Claudius's team rather than Hamlet's or nobody's.
Right. I would agree with that. There are actually massive consequences to his actions of killing Polonius. Massive consequences to Hamlet personally and to people that Hamlet purportedly cares about. Ophelia, number one, right? Like supposedly loves her, just killed her dad, does not seem to care that he just killed her dad. Like doesn't seem to care at all. So if we're making arguments for Hamlet being crazy and mad, I think his response to killing Polonius is definitely one to consider about, is this how a sane person responds to murdering someone? um, and you who is it that's sorry, I've had several people ask me for help on their papers, so I've read a few of these passages. Who is it that's doing the passage at the end where Hamlet excuses himself for murdering Polonius because of his madness?
That's me. I did that.
Yeah, that's you. Okay, that's you, Olivia. Yeah, so at the end, in that last, and there's lots to talk about in that last scene, but Hamlet is like defending his actions of killing Polonius by basically saying, well, you can't fault me because I was mad. I was crazy at the time. And what do you think? Was he crazy? Is the madness real or not? Go ahead, Olivia. Yeah, you want to weigh in here.
After writing the paper, I realized that the debate and question and idea of Hamlet's madness is like a never-ending train. You don't get off. It's a big fat circle that goes around and around and around. But I think Hamlet was mad, and I think that's why every single action that he does, everything he says, everything that doesn't make sense is all because he's literally crazy. And I think he was crazy even before all these things happened to him. And so what my paper was about was in that passage, he apologizes kind of to Laertes and confesses that he was mad, but then he goes on and very abruptly switches to third person narrative and is basically like, I was a victim of my own madness, which just makes him sound crazier. And so the fact that, first of all, like if you saw someone walking around being like, so like my name is Olivia, so I was like, well, Olivia was crazy, like that makes you sound crazy. And he's disassociating from himself. So basically he's saying that I was crazy, yeah, but I'm not crazy now. But the fact that I'm not crazy now makes me crazy because I'm not aware that I'm crazy. So he's just crazy all the time. He's a nut job. Honestly, I think this entire play is a nut job.
Yeah, anyone else want to weigh in there? Because I think Olivia's point is like right on, that Like when we start was he crazy or was he pretending to be crazy? Is he really sane the whole time? Is this an act or is he like actually, it is a circular, we can argue any side of this, right?
I think it's he started off sort of, he was a normal guy, but then his father's death, his love for him sort of, I think, just sent him down the path where there were several parts where I think he'd have like his soliloquies, he'd be talking to himself, he'd like sort of analyze what was going on and what his actions were. And there's several parts there where there was kind of a chance for him to not escape his craziness, but like, stop what he was doing and realize, hey, maybe I am crazy, but he never did. And it kind of just consumed him and, led him to kill Polonius without even feeling any sort of remorse for having killed his Ophelia's father. So I think it was sort of, he wasn't crazy to begin with, but the story as it went on, the things that happened in his drive to avenge his father, I think sort of consumed him and made him go crazy.
Okay, so yeah, that's who would agree with that statement, that maybe he's not crazy at the beginning, or like not crazy initially, but grief or depression or death of his father, or just like the mental weight of knowing he needs to avenge his father, all of those sort of contribute to a downward spiral of mental stability.
I definitely think he wasn't like as crazy as he is now at the beginning, but I think he was born with a proneness to being crazy, and all these things that happen to him makes him nuts, and it just catapults him into this insanity. And by the end of the play, he's just so crazy that nothing even matters at that point.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this thought? Alyssa?
I think that I agree with the dissent, but I think, to me, it seems more like he chose to be like, to fake being crazy, which I've already made my opinion clear on that plan. But I think that he kept doing things that made people believe that, and he kept excusing it as, well, this is what I have to do to make this work. And slowly but surely, I think that kind of descended into actual madness, and it became real and solidified. And I don't know that I could really pinpoint when that happened, or if he even realizes it himself, that he's not just doing things to fake it anymore. But I definitely think that it was a descent. I don't think he started out crazy, but I don't think that the grief helped. I think, without the grief, maybe he would have been able to stay above water. But I think that, with everything that was already going on, I think it helped him fall deeper.
And I think there's definitely readings for all of these, right? Like ways to support all of these positions. I was also going to say, I'm just going to point out, or I don't know, harkening back to what we talked about, or what we mentioned last week. Well, and somebody did bring this up. Some of you did comment on his depression specifically, on whether or not he's depressed. And so just to say this here, that like these terms we're throwing around, he's depressed, he's crazy, he's mad, like we would never talk this way about anyone alive right now, right? Because it's not PC to say these things. It's not okay. And we have a much different cultural understanding of what depression is, of what even madness is, what craziness is. Like, for instance, today psychologists would talk about, post-traumatic stress disorder. We would talk about trauma experiences or trauma reactions. They would talk about, like anxiety or whatever terminology they would use, right? That's like the language that it would be discussed in today. And some people do, I think I mentioned this last week, some people do those types of readings where we're going to take modern psychological terms and modern psychological understandings, of how the brain works, or of how the brain responds to trauma, or how the brain responds to grief. And we're going to apply that to the character of Shakespeare, and we're going to talk about him not so much as being crazy or going crazy or descending into madness, but as a, as a deeply psychological person who is responding to grief or responding to trauma, or, yes, maybe a proclivity to depressive episodes, or, proclivity to something else, right? That's how we talk about him from a modern perspective. But then again, what we also talked about last week is that historically, it would have been viewed very differently, right? Historically, what madness is, or what craziness is, or even what depression is. I'm not sure that they had the term depression. I think melancholy, that's the term they would have used. They would have used, melancholy was one of the humors. So they would have talked about him having a melancholic humor. Or they would have talked about it in some other ways, and it would not, and I think agency would have played more of a role in it than in historical terms than we would give it today, right? Like modern psychology, we don't necessarily ascribe choice to any of these reactions, to grief or to depression. We don't choose depression, we don't choose grief, and you can't just get over it. But in Hamlet's day, and that partly explains the king and queen's response to his grief, right? Like, just get over it. Just get over it, Hamlet. But yes, they may have felt that Hamlet was more capable of choosing madness, of choosing to be mad, or of choosing not to be mad. I don't know. Because it does seem that, and especially Hamlet's argument there at the end, or what a definition of madness is that the agency is gone. So when does Hamlet cross the line where he is no longer in control, and it's no longer his human agent making choices and being in control? That's hard. It's hard to tease out there. Ophelia. Do you want to talk about Ophelia, anybody? We're talking about madness already. Jesse, you want to jump in on Ophelia?
Yeah, so I kind of thought of Ophelia kind of going mad herself, like much later when her father died as well. But then, when she drowned, people like, there's like a whole thing about it where it's like, do you think she killed herself? Do you think it was an accidental suicide? Do you think that it was just, an accident where she just stopped trying, or what is considered a suicide in Shakespearean time? And
I'm just gonna jump in here and point out performance note. This is one of those scenes. Remember when we talked about paying attention to what happens off stage as opposed to what happens on stage? So Ophelia's death happens off stage, right? And we hear about it through the queen. So there are question marks galore about what actually happened. And even how the queen says it, like, is the queen saying it's suicide, or is the queen saying it's an accident? So what's interesting about performances is that if the production chooses to dramatize that scene, they have to make a choice about whether Ophelia is committing suicide or whether this is an accident or not. And so, yeah, a production that like actually shows that happening has to make a choice about it. Olivia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up this thing. I remember asking you if you had seen the movie Ophelia when we talked last time.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay, so I ended up watching it. It was really good. But the whole movie was about, so it was about her perspective, but it was basically like The Lion King 1.5, if that makes sense. Like, it was everything behind, which is really funny because The Lion King is based off Hamlet, but like it was everything that was happening behind everything that was happening, and it all had to do with Ophelia.
Okay.
It's crazy because I kind of like, is it okay if I spoil it for you guys? Like, if anyone disagrees, like shake your head and I won't do it, but okay. So in the end, like, she actually is alive, and so she lives, and like there's all these things that happen that like And it's crazy because most of the things that happen in the play actually adds up to the conclusion that they make for Ophelia. And so like you're sitting here and you're like, what if that actually happened like in the play? Like she actually lived and all this stuff happened. And it's just, there's so many things that could happen behind the scenes of this play just based off what like you could, there's so many things that could be happening and you don't even know. So, and it's a really interesting movie. You guys should definitely watch it.
Yeah, I will have to check that out. And hearing you talk about it also, like, I need to watch it right after Rosencrantz and Guildenstern too. Speaking of behind the scenes things, Alyssa?
Yeah, so actually I've actually played Ophelia in a stage production before. So I had to do like so much over analyzation of the character, especially because like I'm supposed to know what I'm saying. And it was a long time ago, but I still remember a lot of it. And I always remembered one of the things that bothered me the most was like Gertrude has like a really long description of her dying. And she goes on to describe like, you know, she flailed for a while. I saw her fall. I saw her float there for quite some time. And it always bothered me so much. I'm like, why didn't you send anybody? Like you make it seem like she was floating for a while before she drowned, not to mention the fact that when you drown, you don't die right away. And it bothers me that Gertrude has this long-winded firsthand account of watching Ophelia die. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's never struck me before, but like fair point. Fair point. Yeah. Not that I've ever watched anyone drown before, but you imagine that you would like
a decent amount of time, right? To like help people.
And that you wouldn't just stand around. Yeah, Olivia?
Okay, so obviously this is not my original idea because I got this from the movie, but in the movie, she actually poisons herself. But now that I'm thinking about that, isn't that like the same thing that's the same thing that happens in Romeo and Juliet? So Juliet poisons herself and it like gives her like a fake death.
Mhm.
And then she wakes up later and that's exactly what they do in Ophelia. So like, and that's how she ends up being alive in the end. And so I'm wondering maybe that's kind of like maybe that's what actually happened. Did this movie get everything right? Because then it would be like it would be something that Shakespeare has come up with in his head before.
Beautiful thing about literature and gaps, we call them gaps, right? These unanswerable questions where there is so much room for us to insert things like that. And there's lots of gaps in this one, tons. Andrew.
I kind of like that theory too, especially because I think Hamlet especially refers to Julius Caesar, like I think twice.
It does. Mm-hmm.
His own production of, well, not necessarily his own, just like it kind of sounds like his own, but
no, it absolutely is. And
okay.
no, that was like a very common thing in the early modern stage to refer to other plays that had been popular, that had come just before. And it's also, I forget what line it is and I forget who says it. I should have marked this out for you, but one of the characters actually says, I played Julius Caesar, or I was Julius. Remember when one of the characters says that?
Yeah.
And it's
Polonius
like
actually says that he's
Polonius. That's right. It is very likely that the actor who played Polonius on the Shakespearean stage played Julius Caesar on the Shakespearean stage too, like in the same company. And it was probably self-referential like that because they made jokes like that all the time. And it's kind of fun because they would poke fun at other playwrights and like other playwrights' plays in their plays. And so like all that intertextuality between the plays is a lot of fun for us Shakespeare nerdy scholars to sit and sift through and be like, yeah, that's so funny. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Keep going, Andrew.
No, I just thought because like he was referring to his last play and that was the only one that I could really pick up on. I would not be surprised if like the next one he's talking about with concerns to Ophelia would be Romeo and Juliet.
So Romeo and Juliet was written before Hamlet.
Never mind then. Sorry.
But no, that actually like strengthened the argument because it was written first. we've got a poison plot out there. And so like maybe that's where we get the poison, or maybe he does have the idea of a poison plot for a female death in here going on in Hamlet.
Maybe
crazy things have happened.
maybe there was a draft where that happened and she came back to life, but then he cut it last minute. And so the plan was originally that she would come back to life, but then he's just like, oh, let's just have her dead. And so that's why Gertrude is saying all those things. But it doesn't make sense because the ending that he wanted to happen got cut.
Well, I will spoil it and tell you there's not an existing draft that I know of where that happens. But there are definite variations in existing drafts of Hamlet, definite major variations. And they're actually all online. If you want to go look at them, they're all in your Norton Online, all the biggest variations. And I do feel like different things happen to Ophelia in some of them, but I can't remember what some of those are. But does anyone want to tackle the question of the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia? Do we think that there is a relationship there? What do we think is going on between those two? Jesse, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I was kind of it was kind of like, I don't even know. Ophelia didn't necessarily their relationship. Because at first it's like you see a love interest and everything, but then Hamlet treats her not the nicest. And then when I think it was the king and the queen said have this book, meet with Hamlet in the hallway, while he passes. And she's like, I don't love you. And then he goes off on her, but it's not like on her, it's more of the I hate women, and goes down a list. And then I think after that, it just kind of just exploded. However, when she dies, Hamlet then says, but she was the love of my life and everything. And I'm just like, you are a mess.
No, so this is what gets me about it. So yes, you're seeing right there where they set Ophelia up with the book to go into Hamlet after, and it is directly after his to be or not to be speech, right? And Hamlet he's so cruel to her, like cruel. Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? Like, get thee to a nunnery. I will not marry you. I hate women. Yes, those speeches there are just, cruel. It's cruel, right? In the very next scene, it's almost like he's flirting with her. Do you guys remember the mousetrap scene? Okay, and maybe you didn't pick up on all the innuendo, but he is like throwing around sexual innuendos right and left at Ophelia. When he's like, well, let me see if I can find that. So they're setting up the play, and the queen says, Hamlet, come sit by me, and he says, no, good mother, here's metal more attractive, and he goes over to sit by Ophelia. Lady, shall I lie in your lap? And Ophelia's like, no, my lord. The guy was just yelling at her the scene before to get thee to a nunnery. And P.S., shall I lie is sexual innuendo. Can I sleep with you? Double meaning there. And then Hamlet clarifies, I mean my head upon your lap. Can I lay my head on your lap? Well, that's still flirty, right? And she agrees, aye, my lord. Hamlet, do you think I meant country matters? And if you read the gloss on that, country matters is a pun, again, for sexual innuendo. Ophelia, I think nothing, my lord. Yeah, what is she supposed to think? Now you're flirting with her, essentially. That's a fair thought to lie between maids' legs. What is, my lord? Nothing. You are married. Okay, guys, there are so many layers of sexual innuendo here. Andrew?
That scene in particular made me think, well, especially because these actors say what happens off stage. It made me think as to what Ophelia was maybe not revealing to her father about what actually happened when he was like crazy to her. I think it was scene 2, right after Polonius and Laertes was like, don't let this dude like woo you. He's probably just angsty teenager just looking for love. And so I'm wondering if Hamlet wasn't actually crazy. She was just sort of like saying, hey, he was trying to like, I kind of had to tell him no a bit, and so nothing really happened. Maybe Hamlet was kind of frustrated about that, and that's why he said, get thee to another nunnery. That's more conspiratorial on my part, but it makes me think, did Ophelia maybe like subtract some details as to what happened between
No,
him?
and you're bringing up that question again. What do we know? What do we know as an audience about anything? Right? And there's so many gaps, and we can fill all these gaps in with any sort of speculation, right? Because there are just so many, like, if we just take this at surface level, in one scene, Hamlet is cruelly yelling at her that he hates women and get thee to a nunnery. And in the very next scene is overtly flirting and, like making sexual jokes. I would call it harassment. Modern day, in modern day times, this qualifies as harassment. What is Ophelia supposed to think about how Hamlet feels about her? I mean, what's she supposed to do with this? He's the prince. He's in a powerful situation. She can't just be like, you're a confusing jerk. I'm never talking to you again. I mean, can't maybe she can, but she doesn't. I don't know. There's so much that we don't understand about that relationship, right? Like when we say gaps, so many gaps. Cody.
I feel like part of the reason that he was such a jerk to her is that I understood it to mean that he knew she was kind of spying on him on their behalf, especially whenever you watch the recording that you sent us. Their interpretation of it was that he definitely knew because she walks in and the book's upside down and he corrects it and is like, dude,
That
I'm
was
on
kind of fun.
you.
That's a performance decision
Yeah,
to make
sure.
that. But so if he knows they're being observed, that seems a performance. But they're actually among company here. So this is also a performance, right? Maybe. I mean, the whole court's there. So is he still performing? So right, it's back to the same old question of when is Hamlet pretending and when is Hamlet sincere? Olivia?
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that. I mean, you basically already said it, but when is Hamlet and Ophelia and Hamlet? I don't think there's ever a scene where they're alone completely. So do we actually even know what their relationship is?
Yeah,
like they could be hiding, and I said that earlier because I had no idea what was going to happen and that could still be possible. Like I thought that they were hiding something, and after reading the play I still kind of think that. I think in the once I have to reference back to the movie just so you guys don't think I'm like plagiarizing the movie with my thoughts. I originally thought this, but I kind of always thought that they were in love but not telling anyone. And once again, going back to like a Romeo and Juliet reference, I think they're basically Romeo and Juliet. I think they basically are. And they were in love and they were hiding it. And that's why he's acts like that in front of her, in front of everybody, because they're never actually alone. And then, what was I going to say about that?
So that it is always a performance. They're always pretending something and we never get to know reality.
Because does anyone actually even say that he's allowed to be with her or that they want him to be with her?
Okay, now the queen does eventually tell Ophelia at one point when she's mad, I would have been happy to have you for a daughter-in-law or something like that, right? Do you guys remember? So there is hints in the plays that a marriage between them was not out of the realm of possibility and that people could have been okay with a marriage between them.
But it's not confirmed.
True. It is only spoken in a past tense. I would have liked that kind of a thing.
That's actually at Ophelia's funeral, isn't it? So like after she's already dead.
Is it at the maybe it is at the funeral after she's already dead? And then I mean, yeah, Alyssa, go ahead.
It was she was saying farewell. She said, I wanted to be throwing flowers at your wedding, not at your casket or your body or something like that. Yeah, it was at her. It was
Okay.
like when she was burying her.
So she only said that after the fact that she was dead, not
Yeah.
when she was alive. So therefore, maybe it wasn't even a possibility.
Convenient.
So what I keep coming back to is, okay, I think what we can all agree on, if nothing else, is that this relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia is massively dysfunctional. Whether there's any real emotion between them or not, right? Can we all agree that it's just like a super dysfunctional relationship? Let's go ahead and keep comparisons in mind between Romeo and Juliet when we start talking about how Romeo and Juliet's relationship works and how we culturally hold it up as the best love story of all time. We can talk about that next week. But yes, this idea that, or just coming back to that idea of like, we just don't know, and we just have no way of knowing. The play does not give us it. There are just gaps. The gaps is like the key word of this play, okay? And that's like a key narratological term, gaps. There are just so many gaps. And we can sit and we can stew and we can imagine and we can fill them in and we can say, oh, Ophelia is actually alive. Or we can say Hamlet's faking it the whole time. Or we can say, like, all of this other stuff is going on behind the scenes and their relationship was real and they actually slept together, which some productions do, right? Or, like, no, their relationship was nothing and they were just putting on this weird show to help Hamlet's madness. Or we can say all of these things because the text has so many gaps that it like supports all of these things. It raises so many questions about what is real and how we can know what is real, right? The Hamlet's basic epistemological question here: how do we know what we know is real, and how can we trust what we know? And the whole play is a meditation on that. Yeah, Olivia?
Sorry, I'm like rambling about this, but I really like this play, so that's why. I forgive me for this, but I asked in my discussion, basically, I have this larger question about this play and also just Shakespeare in general. Is Shakespeare actually that great of a writer? Is the big question of why did Hamlet take so long to kill his uncle? Is there an answer to that, or is it just like poor writing on his part? Why is it so debated on? Like that is what
is it poor writing to make Hamlet wait till the fifth act to kill his uncle?
I looked it up, and like authors like T.S. Eliot have said like that is the case, that he doesn't know why Shakespeare is so acclaimed. So I don't necessarily think that, because I don't know enough about Shakespeare to say that, but like, is it possible? Like, I want to know, why is Shakespeare so acclaimed and it's so talked about? Is the reason he's so talked about just because he's actually in reality a poor writer and people are always trying to decipher what he's trying to say, but actually there's no answer to anything he's trying to say?
Okay, Alyssa really wants to jump in here, so let's let you jump in, Alyssa.
Well, I'm not going to say anything about like Shakespeare overall, because that just feels like a rabbit hole. But really good point. Yeah, I think that this was poor writing in terms of like the whole like taking forever to kill his uncle, not to mention the fact that he didn't even have a plan. He was like, yeah, I think they might want to kill me, but let's do the sword fight. And then he was stabbed with poison. He's like, hey, there's poison on that sword. And he was like, oh shit, really? And then stabbed his uncle. Like, it wasn't even, he was like, oh my God, I'm holding poison. Better stab my uncle with it. It wasn't even like he didn't even plan it. It was like, it was such an afterthought. He's like, oh, I'm dying. Better stab my uncle. It was a waste. It was like this buildup, and then it went.
Super interesting. So what we're critiquing here is Shakespeare's plot, his plot structure. Because I think most of us, maybe we can argue this, at a line level, at a poetic level, at the soliloquy level, we can all agree that like that's beautiful writing, that there's some really beautiful writing in here, like, right? Yeah, we can agree on that. But so what I hear you guys taking issue with is his plotting, that he is no good at plots. Owen, did you want to jump in on this question?
Yeah, this is just in response to what Alyssa was saying about specifically why Hamlet only would kill the king after knowing that he's going to die. And this isn't my original idea. This is something that I talked about, or we were talking about when I read Hamlet in high school. And basically, it's the idea that it's possible that he just straight up would not have ever killed the king if he didn't already know he was about to die. Because he was just so, like, the conflict
Wishy-washy.
of, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to live or die is so strong in him that unless it's solved by an outside force, like Laertes here, he wouldn't have ever solved it himself. But once that's done for him, that sort of gives him the drive to finish up his stuff.
I do like that. So I think I will say, Olivia and Alyssa, that you have raised an interesting question that people might take seriously as far as how good is Shakespeare at plot. Because he writes some plays that have major plot issues and that are not as famous as Hamlet, and that just have like glaring holes. Winter's Tale. Have any of you read A Winter's Tale? That plot is like, excuse me, what's going on here? It's like it's name, and it takes scholars a lot of like talking around to justify how that plot works out. So so I think there is room for some criticism of how Shakespeare builds plots. However, we should also recognize that Shakespeare almost 100% of the time is working from other sources. He's getting his plots wholesale from other sources, which does not necessarily speak to his ability to create plots, right? Like but it is it was very common at the time, right? You still are. So Hamlet, this plot is coming to us. We did talk about the original Danish legend that it comes from, but also there was another play. There was another play called Hamlet from the 1580s that's completely lost. We don't have it. We don't know anything about it, but was probably Hamlet's main source text. And so before you can really criticize this plot, it would be better to know best. In an ideal world, we would know what that lost play Hamlet is that he was basing it on, so that we could see we could see how much of the plotting holes are Shakespeare's doing, they're his choice, and how much of it was just the original source material text that he's borrowing wholesale from. Because I think it is a question worth considering. Like, how good are Shakespeare's plots actually? How intentional are they? Or how many holes do they have? And what does that say about him as a writer? At the sentence level, I don't think most of us can argue against Shakespeare's writing. Like at the sentence level, he's brilliant. At the speech level, he's brilliant, right? Like not 100% of the time, maybe, but like a good majority of the time, Shakespeare's amazing at the sentence level. But yes, plot-wise, and we hold Hamlet up. We hold Hamlet up as this like amazing masterpiece of a text. But yes, is all of that intentional? Are these gaps, these unanswered questions, these things we can't tell, are they intentional complexity, or are they unintentional poorly developing the characters in the plot?
I could definitely see them as being like both. Unintentional as in, well, I wrote this and I got about a day before it's going to be produced on stage. So, or it's going to be tonight actually, and we need everyone's go like, I don't know the exact like if they all, I assume they all had scripts like on stage.
There was a lot of that.
I've seen like produced like ones where they have like they all just have the scripts on, but you're just so watching the play that you just forget they have scripts. So either it's going to be tonight, it's going to be tomorrow. I don't have time to fix this. This is not a situation where I'm writing a book and I have months I have editors and they're gonna talk me through all of this. No, it's being produced tonight, and I need to get it out there. So it could be either that very unintentional, or it could be extremely intentional with if everything is wrapped up, people will talk about it, but then maybe less people will go see the play because like, oh yeah, well this thing happened. They're like, wait, no, I gotta see it. I want to see what all these people are talking about. What is this? And so you sort of get, by having unanswered questions, you get people talking about it longer because they have to keep talking about it in order to sort of go through it all. And I mean, I've also read like a bunch of authors that have like really famous books. Plot sucks. Michael Crichton, I had a big Michael Crichton kick senior year of high school because we had to read Sphere for my sci-fi English class. I read basically all of his books. Jurassic Park, extremely famous, terrible plot. All of his books, the ending falls off a cliff. The climax happens, and then the rest of the book is nothing. Oh, they go back to the mainland and they live happily forever after. No consequences. There's no plot. So there's all of these books that are extremely famous. They have very good writing. Plot non-existent.
That is a hallmark of literary pieces of great literary masterpieces, of having beautiful writing and often very thin plots. Plot is not terribly important to many literary scholars. So yes, when we're debating Shakespeare's greatness, there's going to be a whole slew of academia who's going to say, well, his plots don't even matter. Like, plotting is not what makes a writer great. Plots are just there to frame the greatness around. There's definitely going to be those of us, though, who are like, well, without a good plot, what's the point? What's the point of any of this? How do you get people in the audience without a good plot? Yeah, Olivia?
Well, isn't it kind of a common conception that books that are purely written with plot in mind are like commercial books? Is that the right term? So like Harry Potter and like the Hunger Games and all that.
Not
and then
considered
books
great literature.
that are
That is
written
snobbish.
based on like, yeah. So but then like books that are written for like the tone and mood and the language are typically the books that are like studied and acclaimed and like all that. I don't remember when I read that or where I read that, but it was knowledge that came to me recently.
However, I don't know if defend is the right word, to defend Shakespeare. I will say Shakespeare had way better plots than a lot of his contemporaries. If you've ever read Ben Jonson, or if you've ever read, I mean, goodness, even Christopher Marlowe, like Dr. Faustus, super famous play. That plot is like really thin. It's a very thin plot. Brilliant play. Amazing philosophical discussions there. Really thin plot. Anyway, so just to give a plug for Shakespeare's plots, he cared about plot more than his contemporaries did, and had more interesting plots than most of his contemporaries did. I think especially in a lot of his comedies. Just throwing that out there, but that is an interesting thing to think about. Okay, we're getting close on time here, and I hate keeping you like the full time, but are there any final questions? Someone brought up a question of what's Laertes or what's Fortinbras doing there at the end. What else? I mean, like, what else do we want to discuss? Alyssa?
In reference to you saying the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead movie, and Olivia said the Ophelia movie. I just wanted to let you know there's a rap song of the entire plot of Hamlet. It's called Hey There, Ophelia. It's the whole plot in a rap song.
That's amazing. You guys, we could actually do an entire class on Shakespeare adaptation and the way that he's like culturally adapted, because it's brilliant.
But
There's
I
so
do
many
think
brilliant-
that Fortinbras's there because I think Horatio was like, he wanted to die, but Hamlet was like, no, I need you to stay and deal with the woe so that my name isn't dragged through the mud. And I think the whole point was he was there to say like,
Mm.
what happened here, and Horatio was basically doing exactly what he was supposed to and say like, oh, Hamlet's a hero.
Mm.
Here's what happened.
So that's why
here.
Horatio survives, right? But one of the questions that one of you brought up was, why is Fortinbras there at the end? What's that point? Why don't we just end with the deaths? And like, I think the answer I've heard is that Fortinbras is the political future of Denmark at this point. He's come in with his arm. So like answering the question of the king's dead, Hamlet's dead, who's going to rule the country now? Well, it's probably going to be Fortinbras because he's marched in with his army and he's got this like vague political claim or something that's explained at some point. I don't remember the details of all the politics. But I think that's one of the big reasons Fortinbras marches in at the end, is to sort of answer, here's our future. And there's probably a deeper answer than that. I know people have written a lot about Fortinbras. Any other final questions or things that we want to like really dig into in the last 4 minutes of class?
I was kind of bummed that we weren't reading 12th Night and The Taming of the Shrew, because I wanted to read those and then go back and watch 10 Things I Hate About You and She's the Man, just to compare them.
Gosh, his comedies are the best. They are the best. Although Taming of the Shrew is not the best. It's got moments, but anyway. 10 Things I Hate About You is the best, though, definitely. All
After
right.
I watched 10 Things I Hate About You, I read the plot of Taming of the Shrew and I was like, what?
It got even worse for me when I read a book about falcon training and like how they train falcons, and I realized that everything he does to Kate is exactly what a falconer does to break a falcon. And I was like, oh, okay, we're comparing women to falcons. Nope, canceled. Anyway, all right. We are moving on to Romeo and Juliet next week. Woohoo! I'm assuming, again, you've either read it or you're like just culturally aware enough that you know what this play is about, because this play is everywhere. So much everywhere that I would not have taught this play if it weren't for all of my English teachers out there who are probably going to have to teach this play at some point in their career. So we're going to give you something to teach about, hopefully. Something new with this play. It's fun. There are good stuff. It's an easy play to make fun of, but there's some really, really good stuff in this play too. So we'll have fun with Romeo and Juliet. And don't forget about peer review. Don't forget about getting your papers in Sunday. Let me know if you have any questions. I can't promise I'll be super responsive this weekend. We're finding out baby gender tomorrow and hosting family. So it's kind of like anyway, I'll let you know next week when we find out. Anyway, but if you have questions, go ahead and contact me, okay? All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.